Education Minister Jason Clare has announced an overhaul to the HECS student debt system, which will see $3 billion wiped for over 3 million Australians. The policy change will see the indexation, which is currently is tied to CPI. Now it'll be tied to whichever is the lowest out of the consumer price index or the wage price index. Now, it being tied to CPI meant that students were hit with a massive 7.1% indexation rise last year.
We're going to backdate this to last year. In other words, we're going to wipe out what happened last year and make sure that it never happens again. For someone with an average HECS debt of about 26 grand, this means that their HECS debt will be cut by about $1,200.
Now, if you listen to some of the coverage today, you'd think the government was essentially cancelling student debt, but that's not really what's happening. All they're doing is effectively charging a lower interest rate. I find it interesting, Charlotte, that all the promotion, particularly from the government today, has been talking about, we're removing student debt. It all sounds very American, doesn't it? And we know that the Biden administration is essentially trying to do exactly that right now.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit like when you say, universities are free. It's never free. Someone's always paying
for it. Yes.
But on this, this is, I think, probably a net positive. We want people to be able to be educated and to, obviously a lot of the stuff I do is with women, and we know that women are really, they struggle the most paying off their HECS debt. So I think this is a positive. There's just one policy idea that came up. The Hilma's candidate who ran for the seat of Cook, Gwen Churn, she had a policy idea that I think actually kind of goes to the last segment of what we're discussing, of reducing HECS debt for young people if they sign up to volunteer for the RFS, the SES or something like that. And I think that that's a cool idea because we're talking about purpose. We know that volunteering rates are declining in Australia. We also know young people need a sense of purpose and they need to get outside off their screens. And I thought that was a unique kind of approach to that would also be.
And of course, we end up... There's something I don't understand. Why does there have to be any indexation? If a student accumulates a certain amount of HECS debt while they're studying, when they finish, that's the sum. Why does it have to keep going up? Now, I'm an economic idiot. I'm really, really happy to say I'm an economic idiot, right? There's got to be an answer to this. But why does it have to keep going up?
I give you the answer. The short answer is that the government wants to recover that money in relation to inflation, right? So your HECS debt's not going to be 9 grand. Let's say your HECS debt's 90 grand when you leave university in 2015. By the time you get to 2025, that 90 grand is worth a lot less comparatively to the 90 grand today, right? So what they're saying is we want you to pay back...
He normally does this with whiteboards.
The effective rate of the money as it is valued today compared to what it was back then. But I don't think it's a bad point because when you go to a bank, Joe, and you take out a loan, of course you pay an interest rate per annum, but that interest rate can go up and down depending on what the RBA sets. And it is quite possible that you could take out a loan today and when you pay it back in 5 years, that the principal amount you've borrowed has not actually changed. All you've paid back is that interest rate, which could have been 0.5%.
Anyone with a mortgage knows this, and the interest rate you'll pay on any loan is going to be vastly higher than inflation. And so HECS is deliberately geared so that it's effectively a net zero for both the government and the student. So the government is not making money off it, but it is getting back in whatever day the last dollars paid terms, the same amount that it outlaid to the student. So I think that's perfectly reasonable. The only reason this has even ever come up is because suddenly the inflation rate is so much higher, almost double the average increase of wages. This is exactly what they do with pensions. So pensions go up by whichever is higher out of the wage price index or the consumer price index. And it's only been, and usually there's, a B's proverbial in it. It's a 0.1 or a 0.2 or less than 1%. It's only now with the super high inflation rates that this has become a real problem. And therefore that has made it particularly unfair on HECS repayments because they're repaying more than they're increasing. And also with HECS repayments as well, there's a threshold where you don't pay it until you earn a certain amount, and then it just comes out as a percentage. Is perfectly reasonable. Working class people who typically earn less than university graduates should not be subsidising people who graduate from university and earn more money as a result. I think it's very, very fair and reasonable, and I think Jason Clare has the best set of cheekbones I've ever seen.
But is that going to happen? Because the money that those students don't pay back now comes from taxpayers. So are the working class people going to end up subsidising?
Well, they do already subsidise it anyway, because HECS isn't the entire cost of your degree.
Let's talk, the elephant in the room is these universities get paid way too much money anyway.
Yeah, I agree. And we set up all these kids to get a HECS debt, to go out and get jobs that are never going to apply to the degrees they get anyway. You know, we should go back to, if you want to talk about, people talk about free university, right?
Yeah.
Everyone lauds Gough Whitlam for introducing free. He did not introduce free university. Before Gough Whitlam, we had Commonwealth scholarships, right? And that was part of the Menzies government, which essentially said you can get free university if you have academic aptitude. I don't see any particular issue with that.